Welcome to the Afterspin, opinions from thought leaders in our state. I want to ask John Hood and Chris Fitzsimon. Our mutual friend D.G. Martin posted an interesting piece this past week asserting that far right wingers are forcing moderate Republicans out of their party, while ultra liberals are also forcing moderates out of the Democratic Party. First of all, do you agree with this assessment? And if so, where are these moderates going to go? John?
Well, they're going to still vote in the elections, and they're going to choose between D and R almost all the time. So we don't need to get too carried away with this. It's not as if there's some gigantic movement of people away from the two parties toward third-party candidates or a third party or unaffiliated candidates. It's not really what's going on. What's happening is the two parties for the last 30 years have been sorting themselves out. There aren't very many liberal to moderate Republicans. There aren't very many conservative to moderate Democrats. The two parties have sorted themselves out. That has some positive effects in the sense that voters have more knowledge. If they go into a race, county commission, state legislature, they don't really know much about the candidates, they can choose D or R, and it can actually mean something. Of course, the negative side is that there are lots of people whose views don't really comport with the candidates they're presented, and we don't have enough ability of people to talk across the political divide when we get into office.
That's exactly the point, though, isn't it, Chris? Because, I mean, if the majorities of these parties are either ultra-liberal or ultra-conservative, that's who the candidates are being chosen. Where are these moderates going to go?
Well, I think John's right. I mean, you have to decide. Generally, there's not another option, although I do think ballot access laws in North Carolina, the General Assembly did loosen them some, which I thought was good. Of course, they didn't loosen them for themselves, which I thought was ridiculous. But we need more choices on the ballot. But another thing I'd like to bring up is what I have a question is how far, and I'll just use the Republicans because they're in power now. I'd like to see some Republicans or more Republicans speak out when there's somebody so far out of the mainstream. And I'll give you an example. The Republican nominee for Senate in Alabama, Roy Moore, literally believes gay people should be punished for their conduct. Certain people of certain faiths shouldn't be allowed to serve in Congress, even though we have a freedom of religion amendment in our Constitution. He's been removed from the Alabama Supreme Court twice for violating the law. This is a candidate, and most Republicans in the Senate are saying, well, he'll vote with the majority, so we're happy to have him here. Now, there's a couple that have spoken out. Surely there's some line where either party will say, for the good of the country, for goodness sakes, this is not the kind of person we need to serve in the United States Senate. And I'd like the Democrats to do it if we have a Democratic candidate that is that far out of the mainstream as Judge Moore. So that would be a good example to me to try to get back to some common sense leadership in our country.
But back to the point, do you think there's any realistic potential for the moderates in both these parties to coalesce together and form a third party?
There is some talk about that. There's a talk about that every few years. Remember, we've had a lot in recent years, since '92, actually, and even in 1980, John Anderson got a lot of votes.
Yeah.
It was a significant part of the 1980 election, but we had Ross Perot twice. Ralph Nader played a role in 2000. Obviously, Gary Johnson played a significant role in 2016. There are some other alternatives out there. I think it is more likely that there'll be a sort of a backlash against this, and there'll be somewhat more diversity within the two parties that we have.
Agree or disagree?
I don't think there's going to be a third-party presidential candidate of note other than playing the spoiler role as Ross Perot and others did.
Well, not just third-party presidential, but any third party.
Well, I think it's going to be harder even harder maybe down the ballot. I think that we've got to have some statesmen in both parties, and the Republicans are in control now. They should set the example, and I think rejecting Judge Moore would be a good step in the right direction.
Well, thank you for watching the Afterspin. We'll have more video all during the week on ncspin.com.